most great founders have a very clear spike. They are not great at everything, but they're really great at something, and then they leverage that. So that's number one. Number two is they have a ton of drive. And drive is very different, I think, from passion. I think passion is important. It's great with passionate people, but we all know a lot of passionate people who never get anything done. So passion in itself is not enough. Drive is more, yes, you're passionate, but you also have that combined with raw ambition and the ability to execute. So can you see that people have moved things forward in the past, achieved different things, hit milestones, and are they really ambitious about solving an important problem and doing something really big? So that's number two. Number three is grit. Right? Great founders never give up. Right? They just keep on hammering.
Absolutely. We're not looking to use AI to replace lawyers. I mean, lots of fun and games in the press about that, right? New technology like this comes out and our knee-jerk reaction is to go full force and just, replace all lawyers. No, it's not going to work. But there's a whole bunch of high volume, low value, repetitive work that lawyers do every single day of the week.
We had a really deep conversation one day and say, well, what do we do if one day, let's say social media dropped off the face of the earth? Like, how do we remain a real legacy business and continue to have the impact that we have? And I mentioned it before, it's one of the things that still to this day, it doesn't matter what time or when we read them, when we see the impact that our work has had for a person, I get the same butterflies in the stomach and the same feeling of like, this is the reason why, this is our purpose, and I feel as though a lot of my purpose to be able to do this.
And, the COVID hit. And
yes.
Yeah, I don't think it will happen. Like one day when there's a digital human who could be very lifelike, very intelligent conversations, and it could be agentic. The digital human interface that we're building could enable a lot of automations in just one screen, right?
Welcome to the very first episode of AI Edge powered by Microsoft, an unplugged podcast series exploring how AI is transforming Asia's startup landscape. In this series, you'll hear from a range of Microsoft leaders, founders, and industry pioneers who are driving the next wave of AI innovation. Each episode features different Microsoft hosts alongside trailblazing founders and customers driving deep into personal journeys, the challenges they faced, and the breakthrough that are shaping the future of AI. Whether you're a founder building the next big thing or an innovator navigating the challenges of growth, this podcast is your front row seat to the future of AI in Asia. So let's kick off this first episode and dive into the conversation. Hello, I'm Imane Eddine, and I lead digital native pursuits at Microsoft Asia. With me today is Saxon Phipps, who is co-founder and co-CEO of Year13. Let's get started. Welcome, Sax, to the podcast. It's really exciting to have you today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's very excited to be here.
And you know what? This is a brand new podcast series, and you are the first guest that we have in the podcast. And I couldn't have chosen a better guest for the first episode. So really, really happy you're with us today, especially that you are in North Carolina and it's 8 p.m. your time. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. I didn't realize I was the first cab off the rank, and so I'm either going to set a very high bar or a very low bar. And,
no pressure, Sax. So one of the reasons I really wanted to do this episode with you is we met in Sydney actually last year in December and over lunch, and we had an incredible conversation about education and young people and how we support them be their better selves and grow to great generations in the future. And I was truly inspired by your purpose, your mission, and why you're doing what you're doing. And hence, when the producers came to me, I was like, I would love to have Sax in the podcast. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. How did you grow up, where this mission came from, and how Year13 started?
I grew up in Sydney from a very middle-class family. I've got 4 other siblings. My parents had sacrificed a tremendous amount to put me and my siblings through a private school education, and really saw that as the best opportunity to set us up in life. And, we had a great upbringing. We played a lot of rugby. I did a lot of Boy Scouts. I'd spent a lot of time in kind of holidays doing woodworking with my grandparents and cooking and going to different cooking classes. And coming to the end of my tenure at high school, I really didn't know what direction to go into. And I think we put a tremendous amount of pressure on young people to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life when you've had a very, very narrow existence. And so for me, I didn't know what that next step was going to be. And I think, when you've seen what your parents and your families have sacrificed, and you've got others around you that are going to Ivy League colleges or Ivy League universities, they think they know that path they're going into. And on the other side to it, I had friends that were doing apprenticeships, and they were really seen as such a second-rate option.
Yeah.
Where it's just about globally now to find a qualified tradesperson is remarkably hard to find. But these were seen as a second-rate option. And then another interesting phenomenon was really gap years. And over the past kind of 15 years through our work, we now see and understand that a gap year program is really an employment program. So coming to the end of my tenure, I didn't know what direction to go into. I didn't know how to get into any of these other additional opportunities. And so fortunately, it was, I kind of ended up throwing myself in every odd job humanly possible. And at that stage, I took myself off. I did some backpacking, and when I came back, I'd linked up with my business partner, Will. He was a couple of years younger than me at school, and his path was very different. He really wanted to be a carpenter going through high school. And then when he was ended up doing quite well, it wasn't about what his intentions and aspirations were. It was basically, this is the path that you should take. And Will went off and did engineering, much to his distaste. But where we linked up was that we saw so many of our friends that went off into these Ivy League colleges that wasn't truly aligned to those values and interests and skills that they had, they were dropping out. They hated what they were doing. They didn't want to progress any further. And unfortunately, there was a string of young men and a girlfriend very close to Will and his now wife, who unfortunately took their own lives. And this is where we said, this is meant to be a very exciting period of life where you're gaining your own independence, you're making your own independent decisions, and the whole world is out there, but it's so daunting. And there wasn't something there to support young people and students. And it's not exclusive to just a student who may be graduate or going through those final years of graduation. It really was that you can be 2, 3, 4 years out and say, well, this isn't what I wanted to do. How do I use skills and interests, and where can I redirect to? And that was the foundations of Year 13.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And, I relate so much to what you mentioned. Growing up in Morocco, if you are educated, you have 3 options. You are either an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And that's what gets throughout the education system. Otherwise, you are a failure. For parents and families. And we put so much pressure on kids literally from very young age. The question that you ask a kid of 8 years old or 10 years old, what do you want to be in the future? That is a daunting question for a kid who's just playing in the playground. And we do that. We go to the playgrounds and ask, what do you want to be in the future? I want to be happy. That's all. I want to play with my toys, right? So it's daunting to see that pressure that we put on young generation, on the young people. Tell me a little bit more about how did you set the company? What was it like in the beginning of Year 13? And it's been 13 years, right? Since you founded it.
Been 14 years now.
Oh my God. It's a teenager now.
I know. There's people that have come through. I see friends of mine who were kind of mentors to us when we were starting out that now have kids that have graduated, and they're like, honestly, I marveled at what we were doing because it was their kids that were now using us. And I look at these guys and they're now 19, 20, 21, and they're the future. And to know that our work's had that impact still to this day is one of the most meaningful parts of our job. And we still speak about this. But going back to your question, how do we start? We had absolutely no idea about the process and how to build a website back in 2011, 2012. And so, we saved every penny we had by working in bars and being laborers and doing just about every odd job whilst, Will was doing his degree and I was, working. My little brother was a part of the business then. And we saved a lot of cash to be able to kind of get our first iteration of the business built. And so at that stage, 2012, social media was still relatively unknown. And so we were able to start using content marketing before we realized what content marketing was. We've always had the same pillars as a part of the business, be that curiosity is a big part of what we really endorse through our work. Mm-hmm. So find out what you think is cool or what you're curious about and become cool at that. So follow what that can be. So we've always had that advice element, and it's to come from a place of that older brother, older sister, or that friend that's gone off and done a few things that you mightn't have done. Then we've always had employment. We always had gap years. We always had university and tertiary pathways, and we always had apprenticeships. And so we started the business, and we really rode the wave of social media for our first few years, just building an audience. And something that we still do to this day is really listen to our users and our customers. So our users were coming through to us, and they would read an article, and it might be, why are trades greater than a degree? And all we did was take labour market data on the average graduate and then the average graduate of doing an apprenticeship and the high growth of the industry, the skill shortage. And it was something like in the Australian context that, did you know that an Australian apprentice would graduate $180,000 ahead of a university counterpart when you look at wages earned, growth of industry, educational debts? Would this information make you consider an apprenticeship more seriously? And apprenticeships have come a long way over the past kind of 10, 15 years. But this we saw, I think it was 76% of the audience said knowing this information would. And that then led to people inquiring with us and inboxing us and messaging us through the first site saying, do you actually help people get into an apprenticeship, or do you help people get into university? I'm thinking about doing veterinary science, but I've always loved graphic design. How could I combine the two? And so we've always focused on the needs of our user, and our users that we say are obviously young people and students. And then we've obviously got now with where the business is, we've got our customers to understanding those issues that are faced on the customer side. So that was the first kind of 4 years of the business that we were building this audience, riding the wave of social media. And we had a really deep conversation one day and say, well, what do we do if, one day, let's say social media dropped off the face of the earth? Mm-hmm. Like, how do we remain a real legacy business and continue to have the impact that we have? And I mentioned it before, it's one of the things that still to this day, it doesn't matter what time or when we read them, when we see the impact that our work has had for a person, I get the same butterflies in the stomach and the same feeling of this is the reason why, this is our purpose. And I feel as though a lot of my purpose to be able to do this. And Will and I, Subs and I, still, we look at each other each time we get them, we're like, right, this gives us fuel to continue on. And so in 2015-ish or 16-ish, we started to really invest into building out the technology side of the business. So that was where to be able to have these inquiries through and create journeys for our users, all the way for them to be able to make, whether it was an application or inquire directly. And so the next part to it was really saying, well, we have all these schools that are reaching out to us to say, can we use your content? Can we use some of your, it was a lot of our content for our grade 12 students or for our graduates or for students who are thinking about ABC, which we were very open to, and we said, absolutely. But that then led to us looking at, well, what if we then started to really invest into the software side of this? And so we started to kind of move from being that content distribution channel to now really being a software as a service. And so that was a very iterative process for us. There were a lot of trials and errors, and that then led to us fortunately being able to have a program that was used, and it was called the Truth Project initially, in which we went in and explored a lot of the compliances towards effective career education programs, and we built a product that kind of aligned to that, and that was where schools kind of started to adopt it in a really organic sense. So that was, up until about 2018, 2019. And then this thing called the pandemic hit. And so when the pandemic hit, we were in a fortunate enough position that in an instance, all career-related activity through high schools had to stop in an instance, and so we had our software. We released it for free, and I think we went from about 80 schools that were kind of organically growing to 668 or something in the space of 3 weeks, and then that went to 900, and we rode this wave, and so we were like, whoa, we need to be able to respond to this, which furthermore drove us into developing out a complete end-to-end software, which really focused on the student and their aspirations, really empowering them, but then also being able to help facilitate careers advisors and counselors and teachers who were doing different career-related activity. And so that got us to the point where we then started to play around with, we did our first serious capital raise, which was a task in itself whilst being in lockdowns and in going through the back end of the pandemic. So it was, that was the journey from starting to kind of getting to the point of taking on VC money.
I really appreciated the fact that you took time to explain the whole journey from beginning until now for our audience and the people who are aspiring to be founders and entrepreneurs, because usually what they hear is this startup or this unicorn is overnight success. It's not the case. It's 14 years of trials and errors and tribulations and listening to your customers, being agile, being adaptable, being quick to market. All these are valuable lessons for the younger generations who want to set up their own companies and think in a month or two or a year or two, oh my God, it's not working, I need to shut down the business. It's never an overnight success. It's always everything that's not the tip of the iceberg, but the things behind and underneath that not many people talk about. So I really, really appreciated that.
And as you say that, I'm reflecting on that for us, back in 2011, 2012, even having the title, using the phrase that, you're an entrepreneur, you instantly got put into the category of, are you the next Mark Zuckerberg? Yeah. Is that who you think you are? And so for us, it was almost like a deterrent that if you use that term, it's like, oh, okay, you're the next this, or you're going to be the next Snapchat, or you're going to be the next Uber. And I think that puts a bit of a stigma, and it's quite hard because you're like, well, no, here's a problem or here's an opportunity that I've seen and that I want to build towards. Yeah. And we went through, you go through, and to any young person who might be listening to this, you will go through the people closest to you will be the first to really discredit you and be like, okay, yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to pull this off, and like, yeah, good luck to you. But it's not until, what you'll see is you have people who come along that journey very, very quickly who believe in what you're doing. And it kind of goes to what has become almost like our ethos through the business, both professionally and personally, that we fundamentally believe that if you help someone understand, or you're building something that is intrinsically valuable, or for yourself, that is intrinsically motivating, it means that the work and the education that you're doing becomes compelling by nature. And so once you love what you're reading about, or you're learning about, or you're listening about, then you align to other like-minded people. And so, when you align to like-minded people, and it could be, I'm going to use cooking as an example. I always use cooking. I'll do something different. Gaming as an example. It could be like, well, what is it specifically about gaming that you enjoy? Is it the creative realm of it? Is it, the UI, the UX, and the interaction? Or is it the actual development of? Is it the storytelling? And so when you align to something that you with like-minded people, you can be like, well, you like the creative side, but I like the storytelling side, or I like the development side, but you're still both passionate about the same thing, which builds a status and respect, and it allows you to have a resilience factor in looking at the future and being able to say, well, if we do this today and we make one sale, then in another week we could make our second sale, or if the fifth sale, or whatever it might be. But that's, where we look at the business from where we started to where we are today, we're a remarkably different company, and the vision and the mission have stayed the same, but, our process has certainly changed, and it's by no means do we consider ourselves an overnight success. It has been 14 years of trial after tribulation after trial after tribulation. And I think as soon as you accept that and understand that is a massive, massive skill to develop, that resilience factor, that's where I think it sets you up for success. And I think it's been a big part for us. It's helped us professionally. It's helped us personally. It's helped us emotionally be able to understand those things. So it has been a great metaphor for us to be able to develop the business, and we recycle that through the products today.
I love it. And the fact that 14 years in, and we will talk a little bit later about the geo expansion that you're doing. You and Will, you are still grounding yourselves with the mission, with the purpose, and really going back to the basics and why you did this in the first place. And I think that's also part of your success as a company, because you haven't lost your DNA when success and money came later. So that's really amazing. And talking about that, you are in North Carolina. We're doing a cross-border podcast right now between Singapore and North Carolina. Tell me a little bit more about the geo expansion and how a startup from Australia has a founder in North Carolina doing amazing things for the US education system.
Serendipity has had a lot to play in our business, and we were over speaking at South by Southwest in the 2022, and coincidentally, I met someone who was we were in a cowboy store of all places, trying on a Texan hat, and the gentleman next to me just asked, he's like, does this hat make my head look big? And he previously used to be very involved with the education industry. Specifically, he was based in North Carolina, and so I went and I went and had lunch with him and his friends, and we got talking and kind of showed him our product and what we were doing, and he was saying there's a big need for something of what we do over here.
Wow.
And there's a lot of changes that are happening around these post-secondary pathways. Like there's a real importance that's starting to be put on our vocational system, and things like apprenticeships and co-op opportunities, and there are new programs like the College to Career Promise, in which you can do units of your senior year of high school through a community college, which will be credits towards a college degree. So there were all these programs that were coming out, and so we kept working with each other. And then I spent a fair bit of time over here in 2023, coming to and fro to kind of understand the landscape a lot more. And I think it was the fact that we'd had the experience through our first kind of, back then it would have been 10 years on the business, that we could see where this this new, it's almost like as a part of the fourth industrial revolution that everyone was starting to look at, well, okay, it's going to cost me a lot to take this pathway, but this is a high growth industry. We now see the importance of future skills and future industries and the advancements in technology that it was right time and right place. And so now for the past 12 months, we've been over here working with a lot of our partners around understanding those core problems, both on a student front, on our customer front. So it was a serendipitous moment, and it has been I'm very, very grateful that I was there that day to trying on the hat and had met the people that we've met, and it's grown the business. But I think it is something that is very unique to the work that we do, that everyone understands. It doesn't matter if you're a grandparent or you're a young person. We all remember what it's like to go through those decision-making processes of finishing high school, the stresses for parents, the stresses for a young person, the economy of choice that you have around, am I making the right decision? And so I think that gave us a tremendous amount of confidence in, well, if this is the same problem from Australia and it's being met and we're experiencing this now, and obviously through being able to view this audience through the use of social media, we felt as though it was really the right place and the right time, and have been very fortunate and successful here thus far in terms of really getting to the core problems and being able to release products that have been well received.
We started the partnership a year or so ago, right? Sax, and I think it was around the time of the geo expansion as well in the US, and I genuinely just love the partnership that we have. We have similar mission, similar passion and purpose-driven organizations, and it's really, really cool to see the growth and to see the success that you're having. We talk a lot about purpose and we talked a lot about mission, which is great, and I love that. How do you make money?
Took us a while to be able to work out how to do that, but really now there's a myriad of different ways that we can make it. There's obviously our software as a service, so that's just the straight licensing of our technology. For the student, we always have and we always will remain free. I was actually listening to an interview the other day about the Costco CEO, and they have always had their $1.50 hot dogs, and it's like, we will never ever change that, even with the rising cost of inflation, but they're never going to change that. And it's something that we've always stood very true to, that for any young person, doesn't matter where you are, our products are available free of service at that at that level for them. So where we kind of work with students is that a student will come through, they'll develop out a profile, they'll go through their own kind of personalized journey and experience, and we may understand that this student who was, I'm going to use the gaming example, who had a thought they wanted to go into the veterinary sciences, but we found out that they're very creative and have a high attention to detail. They enjoy arithmetic. They may fall in and through that journey, they could do a program through one of our partners, Microsoft, and understand it's called AI Amplified. So this is a program that we've been working with Microsoft and KPMG on about, well, what impact will AI have across industries, and what skills can a student actually upskill in today? So this program has been wildly successful in students being able to go from, well, what is AI to how to use AI and what it means for their future. And I think we are very much so at a real inflection point where technology is going into a different direction, but so is the whole world of work. And in this sense, this is where industry, and we have over 100 industry partners who use our software because they're wanting to understand, well, we know that there are students that are coming out who may want to be, I'll use being a lawyer as an example. Mm-hmm. But, in terms of opportunities to go into that industry, they may be declining due to the risk of automation or some of those entry-level roles being automated. but that same student still possesses a very, very valuable skill set. And so that where that can translate over to could be something like data security or being an analyst, being an AI prompt engineer. It's taking those same skill sets and then moving them across to industries which are going through those hyper growth or have either skill shortages. So an industry partner will host and create a course, an e-learning course through year 13. That's then hosted and that's then obviously held through the site, and it's tailored to the journey of the individual. We have multiple statewide partnerships in which various state governments have actually deployed our software as their preferred kind of a career education platform. So that way, there's kind of enterprise as well. And of course, we work with educators and employers who may be having co-op opportunities, who may be having recruitment opportunities, even employers who are wanting to understand what attracts or what are people unattracted to an industry. So why wouldn't you want to go into being I'm going to make up an industry here, a mud developer? Why do no students want to go in and be creating mud anymore? And our audience will give them a response, and you'll be able to understand. So for the industry side, pardon me again, on the industry side, it means that they can actually say, well, here's how some of our training packages, or here's some of the changes we need to meet so that we can have a workforce coming through to the future.
Amazing. I'm enjoying the conversation, and I know my producer is saying, your time is up, Imane. So my last question will be, if you want to go to your younger self, what would you advise and what would you tell your younger self?
Probably that to understand that anxiety is a future state emotion. So, you're trying to forecast and answer questions that you have no chance to be able to answer. Like, who am I going to be? What am I going to be? If 10 years ago, sitting in, where was I 10 years ago? I would have been still living at my parents' place. At 24, I was living at my parents' place. We weren't earning very good money. We were still working in bars on weekends to kind of make ends meet. And if I could have had a crystal ball and asked, where will I be in 10 years' time? And I see that I'm living in the United States. I'm doing a podcast with Microsoft, the first episode. The business is doing well. I don't think I would have believed what I saw. And even now, I think a lot about some of our successes, some of our failures that are a part of this journey. But my advice would be that understand that every single person goes through this. And I think this is the reason why there is so many people who believe in what we do and always have, is that we all go through it. So it would be it's all about the journey, not the destination. And I hate how much of a cliche that is, but it really is. It really is that, to be able to take a step back and understand. And I think this is a big part, that what I wish I knew, what I know now, and what I would, bestow to my younger self would be, I really do wish I had followed a number of my passions when I was making those decisions. Some of those things that I was really, really interested in, but I was too concerned about what other people thought of that thing. And it's only now in the future that I regret it, because I look back and say, I wish I had followed that path, or I wish I'd done that subject and gone to that thing that I was very inspired by, I loved doing, but I didn't want to admit I loved doing it because I was worried about what others thought. So I've kind of gone a long way around answering that, but I hope that makes sense.
It makes tons of sense. Look, Sax, I think I need to bring you back for a second episode. I think one is not enough. One is not enough.
No, it's my absolute pleasure and honor, and thank you so much for having me on and being a part of this. And as I said, it's been wonderful working with you guys, and the support that you've given us is just unbelievable. So, Imane, I appreciate it. I know that your coffee's probably cold now, and I'll need to get myself something on the way home.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sax. And see you soon somewhere in the US, Sydney or Singapore.
I look forward to it immensely.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for tuning into our first ever episode of AI Edge by Microsoft. If this conversation sparked new ideas or insights, follow and share to stay connected to the pearls of AI innovation in Asia. Until next time, keep leading, keep building, and stay curious.